Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com, and what I want to talk about today is practical versus principle. There's nothing, basically it doesn't have to be a choice. It's not I have to be 100% principled by not being practical, and I have to be 100% practical by not being principled. It's not really that dichotomy that some people like to make it seem. Now there's a difference. We should always have our principles inform our ideals. Okay, so the idea is, what is sort of the ideal world being informed by things like a world without aggression, a world where people work on a voluntary basis, the world where we clearly own ourselves and we have clearly defined, clearly protected property rights. And having an image of that world is important, and knowing sort of what the ideal would be is good. That doesn't mean, though, we can't discuss practical steps in that direction. Now, of course, there are practical steps that are going to be less controversial than others. You going out to start a charity, start a business to address problems you see in the world, to enable people, to empower people, are going to be solutions that you're not going to really see any pushback from any libertarian on. But the thing is that at the end of the day, we do all have to live by policies of governments that do exist. And no amount of ignoring them is going to change that in the short run. So getting involved to make those policies less oppressive, or at least prevent them from becoming more oppressive, is a valuable discussion to be had. So you do have to be willing to engage in that discussion and just say, and not just act like you're above that discussion, because then it's hard to actually prevent, again, the worst policies from coming into place, to prevent things from moving into a more voluntary, more market-based, more property rights-based direction. So, for example, if we're talking about taxes, okay, ideal world, there would be no income tax, and even more ideal, there'd be not necessarily a need for taxes, because basically through governments, through businesses, through charities, through other institutions, we can provide for everything a society needs and demands. And again, you can help us get there by starting a charity, starting a business that helps sort of alleviate this kind of things that government does now. But until we have those charities and businesses in place, there is going to be a demand for some government services. What we can do is try to reform those services in ways that don't distort markets as much, so that way market incentives can take place, and good market incentives can grow an economy within voluntary activity to reduce the demand for those services over time. We can have a more efficient program where basically you're using up less of those resources, so that way the potential of being able to cut taxes are there, so that way we can give people back their property that was confiscated from them. We can discuss making policies more transparent, so that way people aren't oppressed and abused by the abuse of these policies as levers of power. There's a lot of good that can be done by engaging in policy discussions and getting into the weeds on policy and thinking about the incentives, the structure, the management. Not the most exciting conversations in the world, but there is a value in that practical discussion. But that practical discussion should never put aside the principled goal. One should not be shy that from my libertarian principles, I do want to see an ideal world, whether it's in my lifetime or several lifetimes down the road. I would like to work towards that world where people's property doesn't have to be taken, where people can arrange themselves on voluntary ways, where people's property rights are protected and people own themselves. I am not shy about that being what I want, that being the world that I think can exist, even if I'm willing to work in inches, work in steps in the short run, and work towards and work with others who may not necessarily agree with me to make steps in the right direction. Again, I want to end the drug war, but I'll still work with someone on marijuana decriminalization or marijuana legalization, even though to me that's only a small step in the right direction. And even sometimes those small steps don't ignore a lot of the good that can happen from the big steps. But there is still some good from little steps. And sometimes those little steps can help build momentum for bigger steps. So there's a lot of reason to have that discussion. But again, you don't necessarily have to ignore your principled ideas. I can sit there and say, this is my ideal. This is where I want to be. Here's a step to get there that I'm willing to work on. But don't forget, this is really what I want. I am not shy about that. And you may not necessarily want that, but we both feel that this project that we're working on together is a step towards both of our goals, or not. It doesn't conflict with either of our goals. So let's work together. Let's get this small step happening, and we can all keep working towards our ideals. Our ideals should not be the reason that we cannot build coalitions, that we cannot build connections and friendships and network to get things done. Whether they're in business, whether it's in the charitable sector, or even in the government sector, we need to network, we need to build relationships, we need to build bridges to move things closer to our ideals. Our ideals are there to inform our steps going forward, so we move towards that ideal. That ideal is not an excuse to disassociate yourself from everybody else, to put yourself above everybody else and get nothing accomplished towards that ideal. So my name is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com. Hopefully you guys found this interesting. Regardless of what your ideals are, you may not share necessarily my ideals, but regardless of what your ideals are, this message still applies. Because we should have ideals. You should have an idea of where you're going, but where you're going should never prevent you from getting there. So my name is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com. Have a great day and enjoy.